Hi, I'm CD Call, and these are my top 20 favorite games. Go! Number 20, Jedi Power Battles. Recently ported to PC, miraculously, Jedi Power Battles was a PS1-era hack-and-slash game based on The Phantom Menace. It was the blueprint for almost every Jedi combat game Star Wars ever had, and arguably the blueprint for the hack-and-slash genre as a whole. It's one of the early pioneers of the way hack-and-slash games approach combos, the idea of motion-sensitive actions using modifier keys and perfect parrying. It's like the proto-grandparent for every third-person action game to ever come after it. Hell, the Revenge of the Sith PS2 game is practically a more advanced version of Jedi Power Battles. It's a truly groundbreaking game, complete with all the warts that come from being groundbreaking, like the Re-Cyclops to Revenge of the Sith's Cassius. Now there's a reference nobody will get. Sure, it may be janky and weird, but I adore it for its janky weirdness. Number 19, Coffee Talk. I played Coffee Talk on stream a few years ago, and it made for one of the most mellow and relaxing streams I've ever had. The premise is that you are a barista at a coffee shop in a world that's like Dungeons & Dragons was designed by those people who draw the Rugrats kids grown up and wrong. You make coffee for the people who come by and listen to their problems, the writers having apparently mixed up a barista with a bartender. These problems range from work to relationship troubles to an alien coming down looking to breed. The entire experience is pretty mellow, although for as much as I like it, you spend far less time making coffee or offering advice to people than you do simply listening to them talk at you. Always the inevitable mood killer for any game, right next to endless resource shuffling. However, the game is still fun. I said the same thing about Starry Flowers, and I love that game like it was my dog. Number 18, Harvest Moon DS. Farming sims have always been my jam. Something of a side effect from growing up with two people who were weirdly into Harvest Moon is that I got weirdly into it as well by virtue of there being nothing else to do out in the sticks where I grew up. However, modern offerings like Stardew Valley or Everhome just never stimulated too much crafting and resource collection, not enough farming. Harvest Moon, both Friends of Mineral Town and DS, were the ones that kept my interest well into adulthood. Harvest Moon DS is the one I keep coming back to. It's Friends of Mineral Town, but with more stuff, better mechanics, better farm building, better everything. And if you happen to live in Japan, you could also be a lesbian with a mermaid. Oh, sorry, I meant best friends, where you have a platonic ceremony of your friendship with all of your friends and family, and then platonically adopt a child together. I kid, of course. Hide it behind euphemisms all they want. The fact that it was removed for the far less liberal United States indicates they knew exactly what they were doing. Number 17, DMC Devil May Cry. Holy shit, a game most people have actually played. Yeah, fuck you. I like the reboot Devil May Cry more than the original. In fact, I'm not even gonna justify it. I don't owe you anything. Moving on. Number 16, Her Tears Are My Light. Her Tears Are My Light is still the only game about polyamory that delves into the psychological aspect of being poly, as opposed to discrimination or self-hatred. I said everything I needed to say in the big Nom Nom Nami video, so go watch that if you haven't. Number 15, Trilby, The Art of Theft. Trilby is one of those games I call only port in a storm games. You remember being a kid and having only like 2 or 3 games, so you kind of have to play them even if they have mechanics that bother you? Well, when I was in high school, I had an IBM ThinkPad 380 laptop. You know how much RAM this thing had? 64 megabytes. This was released in the early 90s. It was 2009 when I was using this thing. Windows 7 came out that year. I made the grave mistake of installing Windows XP on that thing. I made my first YouTube video on this thing. Do you remember? The Lavender Town Creepypasta video? I made it on Windows Movie Maker. CD, how did you even do that on such an old laptop? It rendered for 7 days. I think that legally qualifies as fermenting a video. My gaming habits during this period were whatever the fuck would run on the combination of a laptop from the early 90s and an operating system that would not run anything released during the 90s. ZSNES will forever be a good emulator, and I will slay anyone who says otherwise. Anyway, one of those games was Trilby, The Art of Theft, released in 2007 by Yahtzee Croshaw. Yes, that Yahtzee. It's the stealth game in the aesthetic of an old 80s era PC game where you control the titular Trilby as he steals his way through an American city. The game is a very noir aesthetic, not uncommon in Yahtzee's work if we're being honest, but in terms of homages to both Thief and old detective movies, it's genuinely fun and offers some challenging stealth puzzles. Number 14, Ham Hams Unite. Oh man, if you're a patron, you know this one. Ham Hams Unite is a Game Boy Color adventure game where you play as Hamtaro having to gather all the other Ham Hams, and along the way cause some of the most destructive chaos ever seen in a game based around a cutesy children's anime. Here's a small list of things you can do in Ham Hams Unite. Blackmail a scammer, murder a hamster in cold blood, physically assault literally everyone you see, pee on everyone you see, achieving your goals by gaslighting people, robbing the press, whatever the fuck this is. And did I mention peeing on everyone? Because that's a really funny thing to do. Overall, it's a good adventure game with some good puzzles, but the sheer balls to the wall lunacy that happens in this game is what makes it truly special, something both sequels utterly did without. Number 13, Darksiders 2. The Darksiders games seemed like they were purpose-built for me. Action games set in a Warcraftian version of Abrahamic mythology. Sold. All we're missing is a game where Strife caps Yahweh in the head. Darksiders 2 remains my favorite. Both the first and second games take a lot of cues from Zelda, but with better combat. The second game has a sprawling map with plenty plenty of places to explore, and a more freeform system of fighting, plus Death's more agile style is really fun to come to grips with. My wife would love this game. I mean, she loves Devil May Cry after all, and it does take a lot of cues from that. Despite loving it, to this day, I still haven't beaten it. Some combat or puzzle challenge ends up stalling me, and when I come back to it, I just start over again. The third game I hated because it decided to turn around and become a Souls-like, which is like a theoretical physicist retraining as a fishmonger. Nothing is improved by emulating Dark Souls. Ugh. Number 12, Astra's Garden. Another game from Nom Nom Nami. I said everything there was to say in my video on all their games. Astra's Garden is an idle game with an immensely deep story about dealing with chronic illness and the way it affects the ones you love. Go watch my video on all their games already. I worked really hard on it. Number 11, Frostpunk. City builders are a favorite of mine. Really, CD? Like, city builders? Hey, I could have hidden depths. You don't know me. City builders are a favorite of mine, and 11-bit Studios' Frostpunk is everything I love about city builders. It's a survival city builder where managing essential resources and ensuring the survival of a limited population are crucial, and it's all set in a frigid winter apocalypse. The winter apocalypse is so underutilized, man. Fuck zombies and nuclear fallout. The sheer indifference of Mother Nature is truly terrifying. It's not just about managing coal, food, and steel. You also have to manage hope and discontent. Keeping people fed and warm will keep them hopeful about their situation, while riskier policies that are more pragmatic about survival will cost hope. The same goes for discontent. Keeping discontent low means you can afford to use more draconian policies later in the game, because you can afford the hit to discontent as long as you can manage it appropriately. There's also an ethical question regarding the social policies you enact, and whether or not you slip into tyranny or cult-like fundamentalism. At this point, it's largely about how much you enjoy thinking about these things. There's a certain skill involved in not taking the extreme policies that are considered crossing the line, but if you do take them, then they effectively remove hope as a resource that needs to be managed, creating a safety net if you happen to be bad at managing open discontent. It's a lot of interconnecting mechanics that make the game quite absorbing, without getting into the minutiae of production trees like other city builders do. Number 10, Tales of Fantasia. The Tales series has been along since the death of the dinosaurs, and it's one I've occasionally peeked in on since real-time action combat is always my jam. Sadly, I've never been able to get into the ones made after the shift to 3D because the combat becomes floaty and weak, while the writing was the main casualty of the internet commodifying anime tropes until all originality was pressed out. No, the one I keep coming back to is Tales of Fantasia, purely for its simplicity. A good straightforward story where you're a ragtag group of friends off to kill a time wizard for burning down your house. Along the way, you'll deal with grief, regret, absolutely hating your support characters, and a last-minute twist that I actually quite liked. It also pioneered the concept of an action RPG 10 years before Kingdom Hearts 2 would perfect it, and the combat is probably the most enjoyable thing about the game. Tales of Fantasia is actually quite enduring as a game because they keep re-releasing it. First there was the SNES release, then it was remade for the PlayStation, then it was remade again for the Game Boy Advance, then again for the PSP with full voiceover, and then again for the PSP a second time with massively updated combat. There's just one little problem with the game, and that's the fact that for some baffling reason, Namco has yet to actually localize the vast majority of releases of the damn thing. Nintendo slapped a cheap machine translation onto the Game Boy Advance version, and that was the only version that the rest of the world got to play. Every other version has remained completely unreleased. If you want to play a high-quality version of it, you need to rely on fan translations, which have varying quality. But goddamn if it isn't worth it. It's probably not a game that'll change your life or blow you away with the greatest story ever told, but at the end you'll sit back and go, you know what? I quite enjoy that. Except for the Moria Mines, that place can fuck up. Number 9, Katana Zero. Okay, so if you've never played Katana Zero, the premise is, what if Superhot was good? You play a combination ninja and drug-addicted war veteran who works as a hitman by exploiting his ability to see the future. So a Jedi. The central gimmick is that you have the ability to slow down time in order to perfectly set up chain kills and deflect bullets as you carve your way through the level, and at the end you get to see the run you just did at regular speed. That alone carries the game, but the fact that it's got some military-industrial complex conspiracy plot as you just carve your way through cop security and other future-seeing ninjas is just a little cherry on top. Yeah, it drags a little too long, but at this point, what game story isn't overwritten like crazy? Number 8, The Old Republic. I've gassed up The Old Republic a lot over the years because it's one of the most interesting things done with Star Wars since Knights of the Old Republic 2. An MMO that's largely in name only, that's otherwise free, has 8 different class campaigns before merging into a really interesting set of stories that explore the depth of Star Wars that nobody would ever think to explore, even building on some of the more eldritch aspects of the Force introduced in Knights of the Old Republic 2. The Old Republic is just a damn good game and a damn good entry in Star Wars storytelling, and honestly, I think if you haven't at least tried it at this point, you're just being picky for no reason. It's free! Number 7, the Mass Effect Trilogy. Do I really need to explain Mass Effect to you? Only the greatest 3D RPG ever made, a trilogy of excellent characters all getting the development and time they needed, telling a beautiful 3-act story on par with one of the better Star Wars trilogies, and only stumbling very slightly at the very end, nonetheless sparking the tinder that would eventually become Gamergate and the alt-right. Okay, that last one wasn't a positive per se, but that's not the game's fault. Seriously, just like with the Old Republic, I've gassed this game up so many times that if you haven't already played it, there's no point in going any more in depth. Like, just play it. Play good games. Number 6, RimWorld. Coming back to city builders, RimWorld is a full-on colony sim that I'm almost good at. You take control of a group of crash-landed sad sacks with random skills and try to make a functioning colony out of them. You have full control of the layout, work assignments, and priority, and digging really deep into the weeds opens up the option to diddle with your DNA. Okay, technically you can diddle with your DNA from the start, but you actually unlock the ability to gain positive effects from it. From there, you can craft your colony in whatever way you see fit, advance up the tech tree enough to build a ship to escape, create a new home and try to coexist with the neighbors, start a matriarchal dictatorship where every man is forced to wear a silly hat and has to sleep on the floor, enslave all your enemies and send them on caravan missions for resources with not enough food and see who breaks first. Just wholesome frontier things. Next game, I'm gonna start a human meat business and see how long it takes the traders to notice when I'm feeding them. Number 5, Elite Dangerous. Hey, do you remember Star Citizen? You know, that game that cost almost $1 billion and is gonna come out and absolutely change the world with its real-time galactic simulation and immersive sim elements and its strong community? Well, Elite Dangerous is Star Citizen if it was managed by someone actually competent. Having been out for 11 years, Elite Dangerous is a game I'm constantly coming back to because the constant and evolving galaxy always has new things to do. The Thargoid War passed by recently, and that was a brutal disruption of the game. There's still busted stations around that haven't been fixed, and now players are straight up colonizing new systems and expanding the inhabited bubble. We're gonna have a highway to Colonia soon enough. With a massive explorable galaxy with 400 billion stars and only 0.7% of which have actually been explored, there's no shortage of new things to see and new places to find, with a community always informing each other of new stuff both around the bubble and out in deep space. Even if you're not involved, everyone benefits from the community interaction and tools available. It's just an utterly delightful space sim that gives everything you'd want from a space sim and feels like you're actually in a changing galactic environment. I played it on stream and done exploration outside the bubble, and everyone was amazed at just how beautiful this game can be. If you're someone who's still waiting for Star Citizen to scam, stop waiting and play the game that's actually out. We may actually get ship interiors at some point. Come on, Frontier, it's the one thing we're missing! Number 4, Dust: An Elysian Tale. Dust: An Elysian Tale is a solo-developed action platformer made by Dean Dodrill. It's actually 12 years old at the time of writing. Solo-developed games are nothing new. There's Cave Story, Kenshi, Return to the Obra Dinn, Undertale, Stardew Valley, but Dust is impressive because it looks like this. It's beautifully hand-painted and hand-animated. The whole thing looks like the child of Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, and Fievel Goes West, and it's a spectacle fighter where, after fighting some monsters who aren't bothering anyone, Dust discovers he's actually a composite being who used to be part of an invading Imperial army conquering the land from the helpless natives and goes, oh, that's what I was doing? Well, fuck that, let's do some violent land back. In a lesser work, Dust would be the fucking villain for expecting the colonizers to inconvenience themselves by going home and not committing genocide and land theft, but here it's just, fuck it, combine this lightning with the zoomies and wipe them all out. If you told me back in 2007 that one of my favorite games of all time would be an anti-imperialist furry Metroidvania, I'd have said, you're insane, now get the fuck out before the creature sees you. Seriously, this has fallen out of discourse for a while, so I'm bringing it back. If you haven't played this, start playing it. Number 3, Syrup 2, Candy Alchemy RPG. I've had a tense relationship with cozy games. They're fun, and I like them, in theory at least, but in practice they often devolve into mind-numbing resource grinds. I fell off Stardew Valley largely because the farming sim about being part of the community had me going into a mine fighting monsters way more than I liked, and most of my time in-game was spent shuffling resources from one box to another. Other attempts to get into the cozy games just went the same way. I found a game called Traveler's Rest about running an inn in a fantasy world, and that was quite delightful, until a few updates turned the game into a crafting nightmare where I had to unlock new recipes by visiting the secret underground temple to the gods of bartending. Even Coffee Talk, which is on this list, went the opposite direction of having too little coffee and too much talk. There has to be a cozy game out there with a good balance between story, characters, and gameplay, and where the gameplay isn't just a resource grind. Well, there is. Syrup 2, Candy Alchemy RPG is exactly what I wanted from a cozy game. Involved gameplay that requires enough thought and grind to be engaging without being mind-numbing, and being balanced between managing Syrup's candy shop and strengthening her bond with all her friends. It strikes a very delicate balance as the characters are interesting and their stories are compelling enough to want to see more of them, without overburdening the player with dialogue in between gameplay, and gameplay that doesn't push the player to be as efficient as possible and to just take it easy and focus on doing the science. The fact that the alchemy section of the game only ever requires one of a given item when working on a new recipe means you're always benefiting from a single day of gathering, and the game is cleverly designed with drop and the monster trader, so you're not always going back to the starting areas after you've unlocked the insta-rail for all the really interesting story beats. This is probably something that helps if you like Nom Nom Nami's characters, and not only do I like them, Syrup herself is my favorite of her characters, and that the story predominantly focuses on Syrup's interactions and bond with Gumdrop, my second favorite of her characters, is a literal Christmas in July for old CD here. At time of writing, I'm currently playing it for the 4th time, and it's not even finished. It's a beta build for patrons, but even incomplete, I just love the primary gameplay loop and the elegant balance between story and gameplay so much that I could replay it almost as much as I replay BioWare games. Now if I could just find some way to get Syrup to smooch the candy girl. Number 2, the Kingdom Hearts series. Be honest, who's surprised? I'm contractually obligated to mention Kingdom Hearts anytime it's even slightly relevant. I'm actually one of the few people who likes the story in this game unironically. It's a simple defeat the bad guy with the power of friendship plot, but it uses that simple framework to go into absolutely wacky and wild places with it, with characters it's very easy to adore. It's common to watch people complain that the story is confusing because they read a wiki article filled with terminology and failing to understand that terminology is the subject of its own game. And I find people who do that are just being a bitch to an otherwise top-tier game just for the 20-year-old meme. On top of just fun writing, it's also the single best action game ever made. The top of the top. Best combat, best boss mechanics, the most brutally difficult challenges ever found in any action game series, of which the rest of the industry is still playing catch-up to, and each game tries out new and experimental things and never really rests on its laurels. If you like action games and you haven't played Kingdom Hearts, you are seriously missing out. Number 1, the Baldur's Gate series. Once again, not surprising here, Baldur's Gate has been with me since I was 11, with the characters growing more and more dear to me as time goes on. The character of Imoen was a comfortable respite during a particularly gruesome period of my life, and I've always found myself coming back to it over and over again. This isn't a complicated entry. It's got damn good writing, some of the best companions in any RPG ever made, and it's just enjoyable once you got your head around the mechanics. Sadly, they never managed to capture the magic after that. Baldur's Gate has lived on in spin-off games, tabletop modules, and even attempts at reviving the series, and they all range from terrible to literally murdering the concept of culture. But that doesn't matter, because the trilogy will always be an enduring classic. Wizards of the Coast wouldn't be desperately milking its name to keep the sinking ship that is Dungeons & Dragons alive. No matter how much WotC tries to rip its guts out and sell it back to everyone, the temptation of playing it again is as easy to fall into as imagining the Warden Imoen having a comforting snuggle. I'm CD Call, and thanks for watching.